Hello there, gang, and welcome to Displaying Model Behaviour. I'm starting a new sister show to all the other shows I do, in which I'm going to run you through the top 100 greatest single-issue comics of all time. Now, this isn't my list. I actually just found a list online, because I thought if I do my list, it's just going to be 100 Spider-Man comics from the 90s. It's not very interesting. I'm just going to tell you that they're all great. Where's the variety? So instead, I've got a random list that gives me a chance to read some new comics. Hopefully, it's going to be an interesting experience. And the first comic we're going to cover from this list at the number 100 slot is Fantastic Four number 60. This is from the second volume of Fantastic Four when it was brought back after the Heroes Reborn storyline. So they kicked off with a fresh number 1 issue in 1998, and then this issue, number 60, came out October 1st, 2002, written by Mark Waid with gorgeous art from the late great Mike Wieringo. And just looking at the front cover here, it couldn't be more perfect, I think, for the Fantastic Four and the type of story that they wanted to tell, because it's bright, it's colourful, it's kind of wholesome, and that's what they wanted to project, I feel, with this story. When I first saw Mike Wieringo's pencils, I wasn't a big fan because they were debuted in a very dramatic Spider-Man story, and I felt like they looked too light and just kind of bubbly and cartoony for the drama that was supposed to be unfolding. Whereas here, with beautiful computer colouring as well, and a story that is a bit more heartfelt and light-hearted, they fit absolutely perfectly. So let's talk about it. The story starts with a really fun kind of subversion of expectations, because we see all these shadowy figures sat around a table being given a presentation about the origins of the Fantastic Four, and you instantly think, we can't see these guys' faces. They look all mysterious and nefarious. These are some evil villains plotting a plan of some sort. Well, maybe they are quite nefarious, because what they actually are is an advertising agency. They are a marketing group that have been employed to improve the brand image of the Fantastic Four, and one lucky guy is being sent to the Baxter Building to live with them for a few days to get an idea and a real personal perspective as to what the Fantastic Four is all about. But what's most surprising is that it's Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic himself, who has hired this agency of publicists to improve the image of the Fantastic Four. So instantly you think, okay, what's the gimmick here? Because Reed is just, he's obsessed with science and improving mankind and answering the great questions. Why would he care about the Fantastic Four's public image? Well, that is what we're going to get back to. So of course, this poor publicist is kind of our eyes to the Fantastic Four. So this is a wonderful, absolutely perfect jumping on issue. Even though it's number 60 in the ongoing series, this is where brand new readers get a full introduction to the Fantastic Four from the eyes of a civilian. And that works terrifically for the most part. But also, it kind of makes me think, some of these Fantastic Four dynamics are a little bit too cliche. Like the Thing and Johnny Storm, they are bickering like little children. We first see the poor publicist in the car, essentially, with the whole group. And it is like mum and dad, Reed and Sue in the front, and the two kids fighting with each other in the back. Okay, I get this is a fun family dynamic, but also these are grown-ass men here. Come on, lads, act your age. Ultimately, what this scene does give us, though, is a wonderful example of just how extraordinary the Fantastic Four's adventures are, because they're going off into deep space to check on this organic bio project that Reed Richards has been creating, and we see how the Fantastic Four is basically a case of these three characters trying to keep Reed Richards safe on his ridiculous, insane adventures and experiments that he does. So they're a family working together to protect each other and to kind of safeguard Reed while he tries to help the human race while also doing ludicrously dangerous things. And when they return from space, we do get some lovely character moments, especially with Franklin Richards. So we see Reed and Sue being the wonderful parents that they are, and how they can balance their superheroics with being a family, with raising their kids. And again, it gives you that wonderful idea of like, these aren't just superheroes, it's a whole family network and dynamic, and it's a support system that they have for each other. And then similarly, in the next few days, we get our guy who's our window to the Fantastic Four, being taken out on various life-threatening adventures. And honestly, it's kind of there to show you how competent the Fantastic Four are, how well they work as a team. But also, I kind of feel like they maybe come off as a little bit impersonal sometimes, because this poor guy, this poor publicist, is absolutely terrified of what's happening around him. And Sue's like, you know what? You're not used to this. You'll get used to it. Deal with it, pal. Stop being such a baby. And it's like, honestly, honey, you might have superpowers, but maybe have some empathy for the little people out here who don't have superpowers and might be slightly terrified when they're standing on an invisible platform thousands of feet above Manhattan. You know? Give the poor guy a break. So as we go through these little snippets and vignettes of life in the Fantastic Four, we have our narrator, our publicist, giving us his thoughts and his view on the family and how the outer world kind of sees them, in that they're superheroes that seem somewhat distanced from just your regular average everyday Joes, because we can't identify with these people up in the ivory tower of the Baxter building. But when he gets closer to them, he sees what a supportive family network they are. And there are some really nice little character moments, like when he's out on the street with the Thing, and the Thing is kind of basically saying like,
"Hey, I'm a giant orange rug dude. I don't have much going for me."
And then they come across these guys who have made a rap album all about the Thing, and they're like, "Oh man, we're the biggest Thing fans. Like, oh, you're awesome." And honestly, it's kind of corny, and also reading rap lyrics, like street rap lyrics written by Mark Waid. It's like, this is kind of adorably silly. But that's what it is. It's adorably silly. And it's a nice little sort of heartwarming character moment where the Thing's like,
"Oh, I guess some people do like me."
Now, what's really interesting, and kind of where the story starts to turn a little bit, is that we join the Fantastic Four on another mission where there's this science experiment that's gone horribly wrong, and they have to come in and help out and fix it, and they do. They get everything under control, and again, our eyes to the story, our press agent, he's making all these notes and talking about the Fantastic Four and how they interact with people, and it turns out that this science experiment was occurring at this big annual conference where all the greatest scientists in the world are invited to test new hypotheses and try new experiments. And this was a year where, for the first time, Reed Richards wasn't invited. And all of a sudden, the penny drops in Sue Storm and the Human Torch and the Thing's minds are like, wait, did Reed hire a publicist and a marketing agency to boost our profile because his feelings were hurt about not being invited? And the publicist is like, whoa, hey, that's not what he said. And then that starts to make you think like, Reed's not interested in like fame and stuff. He shouldn't care about this. Is that why? Well, we'll have to wait and see. So the story progresses with our publicist taking in the adventures of the Fantastic Four, and eventually he goes back to his agency and they've done all these mock-ups of a new Fantastic Four movie they can make and new Fantastic Four comics where they're cool, badass superheroes. And he tells them that's not what the Fantastic Four actually are. And he gives what is essentially the manifesto from Marvel for what the Fantastic Four story is going to be going forward. And that is that these guys are not superheroes. They're adventurers, they're scientists, they're explorers, and occasionally that takes them into the realms of superheroics. But that's not what they do. That's not why they do it. Ultimately, it's Reed Richards. He's the one who is constantly going out and trying to explore the unknown and push the boundaries of what's possible and to find out what's out there. And Reed, Sue, and Johnny... Hi, I'm here in a Piglet onesie because, well, I'm actually wearing it for a different reason, which will become clear later in the video. But I thought that while I'm looking so silly, I might as well correct a silly mistake I made where I referred to Ben as Reed. That doesn't make any sense. I got the names swapped around. It's not the only time I'm going to do that. They are essentially there to support him and keep him safe because they know that what he's doing ultimately is for the good of all mankind. They believe so much in Reed and his ability to hopefully steer the human race towards the brightest possible future that they are willing to dedicate their lives to protecting him from himself half the time. They essentially babysit the smartest man on the planet. And that's what the Fantastic Four is. It's a family that protects and looks after and loves and takes care of each other. And that is just really, really beautiful. And that's why this is such a great introduction to the Fantastic Four. But it doesn't answer why Reed wanted to improve their public image anyway. And that's the ending that really gets you. And this is where I'm going to put like a little sort of spoiler warning, because I'm going to tell you why he did it, because I don't want you to feel cheated in this video. But if you want to read the comic yourself, then go on to Marvel Unlimited and go and read it, because it's a good time. So in our final scene, we have Reed Richards with Valeria, their little baby. I think it's Valeria. Help me out in case I'm wrong. He never mentions the baby by name, but either way, he's putting the baby to sleep in her crib, and he's telling her why he hired this press agency to improve the Fantastic Four's image. And what it ultimately comes down to is that even after all these years, after all the victories and battles and all the time that the Fantastic Four have saved the world, he still carries this huge amount of guilt with him for what he feels responsible for happening to Reed, Sue, and Johnny. See, I told you it wasn't the only time I was going to do that. I mean, Ben, Reed, Ben, they both have letters in them, so how am I supposed to get that right? Because ultimately it was his fault. It was his miscalculations that resulted in them being bombarded by cosmic rays and being changed forever in the most fantastic ways, as the song goes. Now for him, and for Sue perhaps, and even Johnny, these powers aren't a terrible crutch. But for Ben, they really did change his life, not necessarily for the better. And he carries that guilt with him. Also, even with the Human Torch and Sue Storm, even though they have kind of glamorous powers, it still changed their lives in ways that they didn't choose. None of them chose this. They had this thrust upon them by Reed Richards doing. And so because he couldn't undo that, he decided that what he wanted to do was make them the best form that they could be. He wanted their lives to be the best that they could be. He didn't want them to be monsters or freaks or science experiments. He wanted them to be these bright, shining celebrities that people would love and aspire to be like, because that's how he sees them. That's how he wants them to be. He wants them to be the Fantastic Four. That is why they are called the Fantastic Four. And he wants the world to see them for the absolute wonderful human beings that they really are. Hi, so I'm here wearing a Piglet onesie because I thought that I would refilm this next segment that I did originally, because watching it back, I thought it got quite heavy. And I thought for the tone of this video, we need to lighten it a little bit. So I'm gonna make the same points dressed as Piglet from Winnie the Pooh. So what I realized after reading this comic was that it's not just a wholesome look at the Fantastic Four as a family and the important roles that each one plays in supporting one another, but it's a reflection on guilt. And that's something that I was not expecting in the slightest. I never really identified with the Reed Richards character previously. It wasn't until I read this issue and I found out about the guilt that he had been carrying with him for all of these years. Looking at this, I suddenly am able to identify with Reed Richards so much more closely, because I think that every human being in the world, we operate off of one certain emotion or feeling more than any other. And I think honestly for me, it probably is guilt. And even though you can do different things to try and right the balance or make amends, it doesn't matter. Because if you're someone who holds yourself to a certain standard, or you have the empathy for the people that you've affected, then you're always going to carry that with you. And it doesn't matter how many times you might try to make amends, or in Reed Richards' case, how bright he makes his family and friends shine. He's still always going to carry that guilt with him. And certainly in those final panels drawn by Mike Wieringo, where he's putting his daughter to sleep, and you can see the look on his face that he's content with what he's doing, but it's still never going to undo what he did and the guilt that he still carries with him to this day. That's something that I never saw in Reed Richards as a character before, and it's something I'm always going to remember when I watch or read this character from now on. That's why this comic definitely deserves to be in the top 100. I'm really glad it was recommended to me. This gave me a whole new appreciation of the character of Reed Richards, and now I can see something in myself in him, and that counts for a lot. So yeah, I got a lot out of this comic. I wasn't expecting to, but I did. That is the motivation that Reed Richards had for starting the Fantastic Four, and that is what he takes with him through every single adventure they have together. And ultimately, I think that's really beautiful. And now I can see why this issue of Fantastic Four Volume 2 number 60 is deserving of its place on the top 100 greatest single issue comic books of all time. Guys, if you've read this issue, what do you think about it? If you haven't, I highly recommend you go and do. And also, what do you think about this little segment here? I really enjoy this. So if you also have a single issue comic book that you want to recommend for this feature, let me know, because I'm not beholden to the top 100 list that I have. I just want to read more great stuff. So if you have a suggestion, comment below, let me know. And guys, if you like what you see here and you want to see more, then you know what you got to do. You got to join the 6-1 Clicks by clicking the like, share, and subscribe buttons. So thank you so much for watching, and until next time, keep displaying model behavior.
Cup of coffee. Cup of coffee. Oh, yeah. Cup of coffee.